Hello everyone, you are listening to Scenecraft. From opening shots to long takes and epilogues, we examine our favorite scenes from cinema here on the podcast. I'm Cody, here with my fellow members of the Magi,
Mark,
and Connor.
You can find Scenecraft on most social media platforms at Scenecraft Podcasts for the latest news on the show. Today, in celebration of its 25-year anniversary, we will be digging into a modern classic from the year that may go down as the best year for movies ever, 1999. It was a very tough choice to pick just one movie from this incredible year, but with your help on our poll, we selected The Mummy, directed by Stephen Sommers, for today's discussion. And to talk about it, we'd like to give a big hey O'Connell to our special guest and friend of the show, Harry. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me, everyone.
So us four go way back. We've experienced many movie marathons together back in the day. Harry, we were discussing before, we've definitely seen The Mummy together at some point during one of these movie marathons. We know you have a fondness for the film, so we're looking forward to diving in together.
Can't wait.
Well, as usual, let's begin with our brief What We've Been Watching segment, Quick Takes.
Speak quickly.
Quickly, thank you.
Quickly, come on. Hurry up, quicker.
Way quicker.
Okay, I'll say it fast.
Since we are fully immersing ourselves in the year 1999 for today's episode, we gave ourselves some homework and all watched different movies released in 1999. So, Harry, let's start with you as our special guest today. What have you been watching?
Last night, after I finished The Mummy at about 12:30, I put on Galaxy Quest, one of my favorite movies.
Yes.
I love it so much and have seen it so many times, so I figured this one's a good quick take.
Yeah.
So Galaxy Quest, directed by Dean Parisot, for which the logline reads, "The alumni cast of a space opera television series have to play their roles as the real thing when an alien race needs their help. However, they also have to defend both Earth and the alien race from a reptilian warlord." So my theme of the day is fun. The Mummy and my two quick takes are just fun movies. Although looking at 1999, there are tons of serious movies like The Matrix, American Beauty, Sixth Sense. It also had a good deal of fun movies. Galaxy Quest was certainly one of the fun movies. Mm-hmm. This one is particularly dumb funny. Like I think back on all my favorite parts of the movie, and they're just stupid. The characters are stupid. The aliens are comically stupid. They look like live action Power Rangers TV show characters. They're exploding inside out space creatures, all just very stupid. But it's such a lovable and silly movie. I think it's got a PG rating, so it is for all audiences, but it does have a kind of an adult sense of humor. Mm-hmm. The performances are great. Alan Rickman and Tony Shalhoub are favorites. You also have early performances from Justin Long and Sam Rockwell, which are fantastic. But ultimately, it's a lighthearted movie that pokes fun at the space drama genre and the fanatics that come along with it. I think it's mostly a Star Trek dig. But it's done in good faith. It's very self-aware and kind of knows itself as a not too serious movie. So I give it a massive recommend. If you haven't seen it, you need to.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm glad you got to rewatch it. By Grapthar's hammer, you shall be avenged. One of my favorite lines of all time.
It's fantastic. Never give up, never surrender.
Yep.
For some reason, it's not as well known as it should be. Star Trek, obviously super well known, but it has a cult following, obviously, and I think Galaxy Quest also has its own cult following.
Nice.
And then my second movie I chose, eXistenZ. No, it's actually pronounced eXistenZ, by David Cronenberg, for which the logline reads, A game designer on the run from assassins must play her latest virtual reality creation with a marketing trainee to determine if the game has been damaged. This movie's fun, again, but it's completely chaotic and out of control. Rereading the plot of this movie, I don't remember anything because it's so all over the place. But it's so much fun. The characters are super kind of quirky and caricature like. Some of the set pieces, like there's this scene where they're dining in a weird restaurant with amphibious food, and there are guns they're making out of the food. It's all so odd, and it's a Cronenberg, so it's got your typical Cronenberg orifice play. There's a lot of hole fingering and good stuff like that. I love Cronenberg. He's got 2 movies that are different than the rest of his History of Violence and Eastern Promises, and then he's got like the Cronenberg, the real Cronenberg stuff. I think those other 2 are great movies, but this is more true to the Cronenberg form with the orifices and the dystopic technology, run by big corporations trying to control the human mind. And this fits in that bucket, and I think it does it the best of any of them. I think it's better than Scanners. I think it's better than Videodrome, just because it does have that more lighthearted, silly, fun aspect, while still having kind of those dark and maybe existential, as the name kind of suggests. It has some of those themes. I think it is kind of a Plato's Cave allegory, which popped up a lot in the mid 90s, late 90s film, like The Matrix. Obviously, that's the whole thing there. Truman Show, that's kind of that whole thing. Ghost in the Shell, 95. If you like, I don't even know. I would recommend it for anyone. At the very least, read the plot, because you'll get a laugh at how impossible it is to follow what's going on with the weird character names. So I recommend it. What about you, Mark? What have you been watching?
So I decided to rewatch Office Space, which was directed by Mike Judge, and the logline reads, 3 company workers who hate their jobs decide to rebel against their greedy boss. So this was Mike Judge's live action feature directorial debut, and it came on the heels of him already kind of establishing himself as a notable figure in the world of comedy and animation, with the likes of Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill. And for those who haven't seen it, this movie is a really sharp and cynical commentary on corporate life and office job culture. And I will say that after rewatching it for probably the first time in a decade, it's amazing how well these jokes land and how much better they land after you've had some time in the workforce. And more specifically, I remember watching it with my dad way back when and not really understanding the jokes and kind of just laughing along whenever he did. But I will say now that I'm a bit more jaded, little things like the passive aggressiveness of boss Bill Lumbergh or the soul crushing effect of micromanagement really rang true. And there's so many iconic quotes and performances. And for anybody who hasn't seen this film, I would absolutely recommend watching Office Space, which is now streaming on Hulu.
Mark, now that you're like a boss, does this change your approach? Does this change your approach at all?
I mean, in some ways, yeah. I'm like, I wonder if that's how I come across sometimes. And so it was a definitely a moment of self-reflection for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
The key to not being that boss is just don't use the word we. The boss speak is always, we need to get this done. Let's just say you.
Okay. I like that. That's actually really helpful advice.
A quick comment on the boss. Gary Cole, right?
Yes.
Bill Lumbergh. Has anyone here seen 1 Hour Photo?
No, I need to.
I have seen it.
With Robin Williams, yeah. I watched it recently for the first time. And Gary Cole plays Bill Owens, who's the store manager at Save Mart, which is basically like a Walmart.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's right.
It's the exact same character. I think they probably just saw his performance in Office Space and just said, we need to transplant you into this. Just do everything the same. It's pretty funny.
I also watched the movie Dick, which was directed by Andrew Fleming. The logline reads, after wandering off during a White House tour, two high school girls inadvertently become Richard Nixon's top secret advisors at the height of the Watergate scandal. So I finally watched this movie, and it's a film that I remember from its poster, but hadn't actually seen until now. And it stars a young Kirsten Dunst and Michelle Williams as clueless, ditzy teens in a story that basically plays out like a revisionist history piece when they accidentally uncover a few of President Nixon's secrets. One interesting thing about this is that Sony's marketing for the film actually targeted teenage girls. So they focused more on Dunst and Williams rather than the political aspects. And it's maybe why the poster stuck out to me. I just felt like it was everywhere when it came out. But unfortunately, the film was not a box office success. My guess is that it was a bit too lighthearted for serious political drama fans and maybe a bit too satirically complex for younger audiences, such as myself back then. And it's a shame because my wife and I found it very amusing, and it was great seeing early performances from Dunst and Williams at the start of their careers. And it also has a supporting role for Will Ferrell. And it's hilarious because he looks almost identical to the way he does now, like not a day younger, not a day older. But I would recommend watching Dick. It's available to rent on various streaming platforms.
Awesome. I've been curious about this one forever too. And yeah, I mean, I remember that poster, the title just seeming like so provocative for a 10-year-old kid walking through Blockbuster.
Yeah. I honestly feel the same way. And they make great use of the title in the movie, for sure.
Do you guys have a term? You guys should come up with a term at least for the phenomenon of recognition through walking through a Blockbuster and seeing the cover.
Yeah, we should.
Usually as a little kid, like something more provocative, like, like cleavage or, because Dick is the exact same for me.
Right.
Know nothing about it except for just the cover.
Cover. They're kind of looking back like knowingly,
Yeah.
like
at the
on
title
something.
almost. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, I mean, we have like a text chain where sometimes, especially in 1999, where there's so many iconic movie covers that like I know nothing about the movies whatsoever.
Titus,
yeah, the one.
Titus.
Oh, yeah.
Seen it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel like something with the word shelf in the title is needed. Yeah,
There you go.
I only had shelf knowledge.
Shelfology.
Connor, what about you? What have you been watching?
So I only had time for one 1999 movie outside of The Mummy, and it might be an unorthodox pick, but I watched a movie called Blast from the Past, and I'll explain a bit more in a minute about why I chose that. But it was directed by Hugh Wilson, and the logline reads, "A naive man comes out into the world after spending 35 years in a nuclear fallout shelter." So Brendan Fraser starred in 3 movies in 1999, The Mummy, Dudley Do-Right, and Blast from the Past. And he actually shot Blast from the Past right before filming The Mummy. And believe it or not, I have actually not seen many Brendan Fraser movies despite my love of The Mummy. So I wanted to do my homework and see some of his other work from his most bankable years. It's a great premise. It's very similar to Fallout, Cody. I know you're really into Fallout. So
Yeah.
basically in 1961, Fraser is born inside a fallout shelter built by his parents, Christopher Walken and Sissy Spacek,
Nice.
who seal themselves in for 35 years after mistaking an accidental plane crash for a nuclear bomb. Flash forward to the mid-1990s, Fraser emerges as a 35-year-old man with the manners of a naive mid-century boy who's experiencing the outside world for the first time. He pretty quickly meets Alicia Silverstone, and we're off and running in a very satirical, goofy rom-com. I appreciated that Blast from the Past is trying to say something about how much we've changed as a society and how it's almost seen as weird to make an effort to connect with people. Today, that's really more relevant than ever. I had a good time with this, more so in the first 2/3 because it just has a lot of fun with that goofy premise. But it ends a little oddly anticlimactic after all the buildup. I would lightly recommend checking out Blast from the Past just for that 90s nostalgia and the great performance from Fraser. He's honestly really, really good in this. and it's available to rent on a few digital streaming platforms if you want to check it out.
Not to go off on too much of a tangent, I know, Connor, you were planning on watching Dudley Do Right, but
I was.
my 9-year-old self would be high-fiving you for not watching it, because I think it was like at the tender age of 9, I feel like it was one of the movies that I walked out of the theater extremely disappointed and like bored. So
Wow.
I think you
Saying
dodged a bullet
something.
with that one. I haven't seen it in a while, so maybe it would grow on me, but
Yeah, it's much lower down on my list. Maybe I'll get to it someday. I definitely remember the trailers for it. What about you, Cody? What have you been watching? Yeah, my first 1999 pick for this episode is Wild Wild West, directed by Barry Sonnenfeld. The logline reads, "The two best special agents in the Wild West must save President Grant from the clutches of a diabolical, steampunk-savvy Confederate scientist bent on revenge for losing the Civil War." what a logline. And what a bizarre film with many questionable creative choices, some really brilliant ones, but I have to say it holds a special place in my heart for those reasons. Maybe for the same reasons as The Mummy for some people. This is a movie I've seen way too many times since childhood, before I even knew about the 1960s television serial that it's loosely based on. I just remember being totally obsessed as a kid with Artemis Gordon's contraptions on his train and the sort of alt-industrial revolution steampunkiness of it all. That mechanical aesthetic made everything seem so tangible in the film, and it's so memorable for that reason alone. Even if there's a complete lack of logic in moments like putting prescription glasses on a decapitated head being used as like a memory projector, that might be the first Old West era use of the enhance button trope in TV and film. When you watch the film again, you cannot help but wince at the depiction of racism and ableism in the film, which I understand is central to Captain James West's and Dr. Lovelace's arc as they clash throughout the movie. But let's just say this movie could not have been made today for those reasons. And some of the jarring quote-unquote humor probably wasn't even funny back in the late 90s. It definitely doesn't pass the Bechdel test either. But weirdly for me, it all squeaks by on its earnestness and a handful of so bad it's good cult moments. Hence the 16% on Rotten Tomatoes. So here's what I'll say about it. Wild Wild West is not a great movie, but it has some creative merit, including the Wild Wild West Will Smith soundtrack single. It's great. So with many, many caveats, go check this out. It's a weird piece of 1999 cinema, or you could just rewind 2 years back and rewatch the far superior Men in Black, which I think served as like a really misguided inspiration for Warner Brothers here for this movie.
we were really close to having that be this episode for today, because I think I'm the only one of us four that hasn't seen it still.
I cannot believe that you haven't seen it. Gotta watch it.
I don't know how.
You'll be blown away. I almost like wish I could watch you watching it. Yeah, for the first time. Next up, I chose Notting Hill as my second pick, directed by Roger Mitchell. The logline reads, Notting Hill bookshop owner William Thacker falls in love with a world-famous actress, Anna Scott. But press junkets, paparazzi, and tabloid culture threaten to get in the way of their blossoming romance. So Notting Hill is a film I hadn't seen ever, but was well aware of culturally. You know, don't forget, I'm also just a girl standing in front of a boy asking him to love her. What a great line, and that audio is still pervasive across social media. I think that's part of the reason I haven't taken the steps to watch it over the years. It's just so culturally embedded as a rom-com institution that I didn't feel like I would really get anything out of the experience of actually watching the film. But as usual, I was very wrong. I was searching for another 1999 movie I hadn't seen, and my wife wisely suggested this film. Was shocked I had never seen it. And I think the film's really great. It's not trying to do too much. It's resting on its strong, feel-good script, charming performances, and just a distinctly quaint vibe depicting the Notting Hill district. Plenty of moments where I was chuckling out loud and sort of just nodding my head in like an, oh, I get it now fashion. It's the ultimate will they or won't they romantic comedy, and I'm so happy I finally watched this 1999 staple. It really speaks for itself as one of the best examples of a film leaning into this genre, not trying to subvert it, keeping it simple, solid. Really liked Notting Hill. Would recommend it if you somehow haven't seen it like me.
You just gave me chills.
I'm in that boat too. I need to see it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I think you guys will really like it. It's just not trying to do anything. It's not fussy
Yeah.
in any way.
Awesome.
It's just, really solid. Well, thank you guys for your 1999 quick take picks. Let's move into our discussion about The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, and John Hannah, among many others.
We've lost everything, all of our tools, all the equipment, all my clothes.
O'Connell! Hey! O'Connell! It looks to me like I've got all the horses! Hey, Benny! Looks to me like you're on the wrong side of the river!
The logline for the film reads, "At an archaeological dig in the ancient city of Hamunaptra, an American serving in the French Foreign Legion accidentally awakens a mummy who begins to wreak havoc as he searches for the reincarnation of his long-lost love." And just a little quick thing about Brendan Fraser. Common misconception, not Fraser.
Yeah.
It's Fraser.
Mhm.
So we may interchange back and forth a little bit throughout the episode, but just a quick note, it is Fraser, and he confirms it himself, says that everyone pronounces it wrong, but just wanted to note that in case any of us slip.
Yeah.
Let us start with the spoiler-free section. Harry, would you care to start us off on your thoughts about The Mummy?
Wow, where does one even begin with The Mummy? It has so much beauty. It has so much beauty, a beautiful setting, beautiful jewels and riches, beautiful women, beautiful men, but it also veers into the grotesque, the scarab eating, the gruesome deaths, two particularly pathetic, whiny, smelly, snake-like characters. I'd watched this movie so many times as a child. I think at least once with you, Cody, in your basement.
Mhm.
But really, maybe only once or twice over the last decade plus. Of all the special moments in the movie, I think the things from the movie that have really remained in my memory up until this most recent watch were really Benny and the stupid quote-worthy lines and their dumb deliveries. To touch on Benny quickly, he's a sniveling rascal of a character, and he's just a pleasure to watch. He's the perfect traitorous caricature.
Mm-hmm.
His many necklaces, that part of the movie is so funny.
Oh, yeah.
He's completely ruthless and unprincipled. But Benny is just he's a spectacle, and then the lines, there are so many memorable and poorly or just stupidly delivered lines in this movie that I love and have quoted with like some of you guys probably and my brother and my friends over the years, like the famous river, the Benny O'Connell River horses shout off,
Of course.
Just the way Brendan Fraser says stuff is so funny. Blood. Mr. Burns is Hamunaptra, which Hamunaptra is not even a real thing. I didn't realize that until now.
Which is weird considering Oxuna Moon and Emotep are real people,
Yeah.
but totally depicted in a way so far from reality. So it's like they pick and choose what's real, you know?
It's bizarre. Yeah, more lines, patience is a virtue from Evie. Mr. Henderson's bourbon order. It's so good. So yeah, little like minutia that emblazons this movie in my memory. But upon rewatch, I think the thing that maybe the reason it stuck with me so much as a kid is all the hokum, to use Evie's word, I think it is. And it's just filled with fun. I'm a huge Raiders of the Lost Ark fan. And I do think it parallels that movie because it was such a smash success. The key, versus the medallion in the movie, how they kind of fight for it in the fire. The whole boat scene we'll talk about is like the bar scene in Nepal. Marion, Marion Ravenwood versus Evie, the scarabs instead of the snakes, the general tomb stuff, the tomb play. Is all very Indiana Jones.
The play on light with like the mirrors and the staff of Ra headpiece.
It's all
and
there.
The light. Yeah, it's all there. Yeah, totally.
The way the light like lights up the room is very cinematic and fake, right? Like it happens. Like you can follow
see the
beam
light.
Of
light.
Yeah. So I guess you're seeing faster than the speed of light. But it is perfect, and I can't not love this movie, even though it's kind of a stupider, more campy, hokey, hokum-y Indiana Jones, and it still gets it all right. And I think it's a bit more like you like it a bit ironically, whereas I like Indiana Jones because it is like truly an incredible movie. You watch this one with a different mindset, but you end up satisfied all the same in the end.
At this point, you guys know how I feel about this movie, and I'll admit I was the one fully pushing for us to cover this movie, so I was glad to see when the poll went this way. I'll come out and say it too. I love The Mummy. I've easily seen it 15, 20 times, maybe more, and it was a staple of Friday pizza night movie watches in our family for many, many years. It's a 5 out of 5 star movie for me. And yes, that 100% has to do with the nostalgia that I have for the time period that I saw this in my life and just how it made me feel when I watched this back when I was 9 or 10 years old. When I watch it, I get transported back to that time, back when movies were fun. The Mummy doesn't take itself seriously at all. It actually doesn't even make sense a lot of the time. But to me, that's almost beside the point, because when I watch it, I feel like I went on an adventure to somewhere. I don't know what really happened along the way. I think we all unpack movies now after we see them. We review them. We obviously talk about them here on the show. We text about them. Back when I watched The Mummy for the first time, my main thought coming out of it was just like, I watched a movie and it was a great time. And I think there's something about this movie that still has that level of purity to it. Like they just set out to make the biggest, most entertaining summer blockbuster they could, and everybody's really giving it their all in every scene. Like a lot of nostalgia-tinted movies, going back and rewatching them, we definitely see them differently now than we did back then. But for me, all the imperfections, all the goofy qualities only serve the greater good of this wholesome, fun movie. And like you said, Harry, there's more to love with each rewatch, and each cutaway gag or one-liner that you might have missed in the previous viewings. There's so many good moments here. So that's my emotional appeal for this movie. But I'm excited to hear about other, maybe more objective opinions, and spend some time digging up some healthy conversation on this movie. So Cody, how did your rewatch go?
Well, it was bound to happen at some point here. Generally, we have a pretty peaceful coexistence here on Scenecraft, where we are on the same page in admiration for a film, or at least have, a few similar apprehensions about something. But I think we may finally have a little clash here, as it were. Yeah, and I feel bad after that emotional appeal, as you said. And Harry, I'm glad you mentioned the, ironic love for the film. And maybe I'm just on the wrong side of history here. But no matter how many times I watch The Mummy, I just cannot seem to wrap my head around why it does not work for me. At least not in the same way where so many people, especially of our generation, hold a reverence for it. And by no means am I saying this is a bad film. As you really astutely put, Connor, everyone threw everything they had into the film.
Mm-hmm.
They went for it, and I definitely respect it for that. But I think the film ends up being just fine. What bugs me, I think, the most is like all of the Redditor proclamations, people online saying this is the only perfect film in existence. And whether that viewpoint is meant to be ironic or
Of course it is. Of course it is. It's Reddit. It's Reddit.
Oh, right. It's like, this is the perfect film. I'm like,
but I love it.
Come on. Yeah, but I'm just nowhere near that sentiment. So I just want to bring a little more, cooling, tempered energy here to the review. I don't want to yuck Sunamoon anyone's yum here, but let me please forgive the tangent in advance. Here we go. The never-ending opening narration throws me off immediately. It reminds me of the opening merchant monologue in Aladdin, but this is not supposed to be funny. Why was there a map to Hamunaptra even made? Why would the Magi allow this many people to wander there this many times, which I think is 3 or 4 times in the film? Leave this place or die. You have one day. Why? Why is he giving them one day to leave? Just make them leave immediately or kill them. It takes a full hour for the titular mummy to appear. Couldn't the team just round up as many cats as possible to prevent any of this from happening? Maybe release a herd of cats into Hamunaptra to guard it? The weird sandstorm mouth movement thing that Imhotep does, hashtag justice for Winston. Shouldn't the Book of Amun-Ra always be with the Magi if they're worried about the resurrection? And for that matter, why not destroy the Book of the Dead? Or at least have the key to open either book? Like, why is it hidden? Usually I can sit back, enjoy, hand wave so much of this stuff away entirely, but I think because the film is neither so bad it's good, aka sequences from Wild Wild West, nor legitimately good, like another swashbuckling adventure film such as The Mask of Zorro, which I love. It sits in a strange limbo for me. There's a lot I did like, though. The set and prop design, the physical comedy like Jonathan's sarcophagus jump scare, or O'Connell screaming back at the mummy and shooting it with a shotgun. The piranha-like scarab beetles, love those. And the strong chemistry, of course, between characters. That's undeniable. So there's a lot to love here. Just not my cup of tea. Rant over. I will now shut up. But Mark, where do you land on the spectrum here?
Well, I think this should be an interesting conversation because I'm actually more on Cody's side on this one as well. It's not that I think The Mummy is a bad movie. I just think that it's interesting how it can evoke such strong, overwhelmingly positive opinions. And Cody, I think you're definitely hitting on something important about the film's place in our collective nostalgia versus its actual content.
Right.
I feel like it's not quite campy enough to be it's so bad, it's good classic. And at times I feel like it feels like a hodgepodge of action cliches and these forced comedic beats. But that being said, I didn't watch this movie when it came out in 1999. And so I'm definitely viewing it from a more objective, critical lens. And I don't want to give the impression that I expect every film to be high art. There's plenty to really like about The Mummy. Once the action set pieces start rolling in, it's undeniable the amount of work that went into the numerous explosions, fight choreography, and at the time, envelope-pushing use of CGI. And while I'm not as positive about it as Connor or Harry, I do think it does capture a fun, adventurous spirit that's hard to deny, and it has a lighthearted quality to it that makes it an entertaining ride. I think I lightened up on it a little bit more when I began to reflect on the 2017 remake starring Tom Cruise. So a little backstory here. My wife and I ended up watching that because she absolutely loves the 1999 version. And I will say that the 2017 version feels absolutely soulless in comparison to this one. And I'm starting to think that maybe it's this like intangible quality or the playful essence of this version that makes it so appealing.
Yeah.
So maybe not the biggest fan of it, but I can kind of appreciate it, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's great. Two really, really fair points. So I think maybe what we could do quickly, because I've heard a couple words get thrown around. It's hard to define. I've heard campy. I've heard, it's not quite so bad, it's good. How would you all describe the tone of this film if you kind of had to sum it up?
Hokum. Hokey.
Hokey.
Yeah, that may be the best way.
Just a romp, ancient
romp.
Egypt romp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing that I find interesting, and I want to get your take on this, Connor, is there's a lot of really frightening imagery in this. And at the same time, there's scenes like the library scene where she's basically on stilts and like all the stack of books fall down. It feels like it plays for like 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds, like that kind of like funny action. But then there's like really grotesque, gross imagery. Did this scare you as a kid?
Yeah, parts of this definitely scared me as a kid. I think maybe more so like the scarabs I thought were very scary. I really hated that part, especially when it crawls like underneath the skin.
Which is not how skin works, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting into the weeds here. The mummy character I thought was genuinely kind of scary at times. Yeah, especially when he's, what they call more juicy in the early stages of decomposition.
I kind of almost preferred it when he was that version than when he was just like a half naked man, like roaming about. He looked way less menacing and just more like a normal person.
Yeah, I think when the juicy mummy is kind of like revealed in the sarcophagus, that practical, maquette that is like very juicy, they've clearly sprayed like fluid all over it. I think that looks great.
Yeah.
When they go
scary.
more practical in the film, and they do go practical like in a lot of ways, but I think that looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
On the scary aspect, I distinctly remember as a kid when this came out, this for my age, I guess I was 8 when it came out. This was, for an 8-year-old, this was a scary movie. This was not like a fun adventure movie.
Yeah. I
remember my one friend who saw it, and he was like, we thought he was so brave for seeing it in the theaters, and we weren't even allowed to see it. But it was all fright at that age. I don't know at what age, it becomes more fun, maybe the early teens.
No, it's funny you mentioned that, Harry. So I did a little bit of digging to try to like figure out more about the tone and the background, which we can touch on for a bit. So the director, Stephen Sommers, he had seen the original Mummy, back from the 30s when he was 8 years old. And it really stuck with him because the Mummy was just plain scary to him. Dracula was kind of like a very like debonair character, and then the Frankenstein movie was more of like you almost felt bad for the creature, but the Mummy was just purely scary. He didn't want to do a remake of the original film as a straightforward horror film. He actually wanted to turn it into more of that romantic action adventure epic, a lot like he described it, a combination of Indiana Jones and Jason and the Argonauts.
There you go.
With the mummy as the creature that gives the hero a hard time. So you definitely get that like Indiana Jones vibe coming through. He also thought Brendan Fraser perfectly fit this like swashbuckling vibe, like an Errol Flynn type character that he envisioned for Rick O'Connell. So Fraser really understood that the character doesn't take himself too seriously, otherwise the audience can't go on that journey with him. So I thought that was kind of interesting to see where Sommers' head was at in terms of like getting the tone for this film.
Have you guys watched the 2017 version at all?
No, I kind of refuse to. It just does not look fun.
You shouldn't. But if you did, you would see like an alternate version of what this could have been, because
like
it
serious.
does take it really serious, and it just like does not play well at all.
All I remember about the 2017 version is the trailer controversy.
Oh, that's right.
Oh my gosh, we just rewatched that recently.
That was hashed up.
It's one of the greatest things.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, for those who don't know, essentially at some point when the trailer was originally released, a version of the trailer that appeared online in terms of the sound mix only had the I think like dialogue or effects track enabled, and there was no music, no other element there. So particularly in the scene when Tom Cruise is like in a skydiving or in a plane. It's
in
just
a helicopter.
yeah, he's just yelling.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the only track you hear is just this like really goofy sounding yell, and it was quickly taken down online, but it was a monumental error of some
So
kind, and
funny.
I'm not sure how it happened exactly. But just going further into what you were saying, Connor, Stephen Sommers and a little background of the film, just because it's important, I think, to recognize that, while we're trying to give it credit where credit's due, because it was a noted and storied, disaster development period, and a little bit during production too. But this film was in development for over a decade. Producers James Jacks and Sean Daniel, they wanted to reboot the original 1932 version of the film, which was part of the Universal Classic Monsters franchise, along with Dracula and Frankenstein, as you mentioned, Connor. This remake, it changed hands between a number of writers and directors several times, such as George A. Romero of Night of the Living Dead fame, Clive Barker of Hellraiser, Joe Dante of Gremlins. The film was offered to Wes Craven. He turned it down. And amongst all of this, Universal, which at the time was called MCA, was owned by Japanese manufacturer Matsushita Electric, which is now known as Panasonic. And they sold a majority stake in the studio to Canadian beverage distributor Seagram in 1995, which is just so weird and crazy. But, every time a studio changes hands like that, it dooms a lot of projects that are in development or even have just been greenlit, like The Mummy. So this was no exception. It was stuck in development hell and basically scrapped. And then a little later down the line, studio management changed. Universal was once again in search of a hit. And this is when director Stephen Sommers enters the picture, who pitched his version on the film and wrote an 18-page treatment, which is what we, see today. More fun, big summer blockbuster, doesn't take itself too seriously, but isn't truly like a sexy mummy version.
Yeah.
There was a version pitched with like Daniel Day-Lewis, like sexy mummy.
Right.
So just really interesting, the path that this film has taken.
Wow.
With all that background, I think we can dive into our scene selection for the day, which we're going to call Wrong Side of the River. And as usual, beware of spoilers ahead.
Is there anyone there?
Yes, what do you see?
Spoilers! Right ahead!
Thank you.
Connor, you usually give us the scene beats here, and today is no exception. I especially want to hear your take on the scene. Do you mind?
Yeah, no, I'd love to take you through it. So this scene runs for 8 action-packed minutes and takes place about 25 minutes into the film. Cairo librarian and aspiring Egyptologist Evelyn, her brother Jonathan, and their guide, the American Rick O'Connell, board a steamer ship to begin their expedition to the lost city of Hamunaptra. The scene begins on a moonlit night along the river. We see a threatening-looking group of Magi soldiers paddling quietly up to the ship, one of them flashing a sharp-looking hook that perfectly glints in the moonlight. On board, our crew encounters a band of American treasure hunters led by famed Egyptologist Dr. Alan Chamberlain and guided by Benny, a cowardly former Legion soldier who served with Rick and also knows the location of the lost city. During a quiet moment alone, Evelyn and Rick discuss their different takes on what may await them at Hamunaptra. For Evelyn, she's hoping to find the legendary Book of Amun-Ra. And for Rick, he's armed and ready to take on whatever evil is lurking under the sand. Suddenly, all hell breaks loose when the Magi board the ship and go looking for Evelyn's map and the key, as they refer to it. O'Connell and the Americans get into a chaotic shootout with the Magi, inadvertently starting a huge fire that engulfs the entire ship in flames. As the group scrambles to save themselves, the two crews jump ship and end up on opposite sides of the river. Their competition to see who can get to the lost city first kicks off in earnest, giving us a good sense of the dynamics that we'll see in play throughout the rest of the film.
There we go.
How was that breakdown?
Great. It was great.
Do you feel like you just watched it?
I do. And it actually helped. It makes a little more sense out of what was going on there for me. Yeah.
All right. So why did we pick this scene? I can start us off with a couple thoughts because, as you heard, I love this movie. So I think this is my favorite scene in The Mummy when I really had to sit down and think about which scene we wanted to talk about. It's the true action kickoff to the movie, and everything in this ship scene really sets the table story-wise and tone-wise for what we're about to see in the rest of the film. If you really dig into it, every detail is so carefully included to foreshadow something about the plot. We get the rowdy group of Americans with the Egyptologist. They're all feeling very yee-haw and super confident, but they're not really knowing what they're about to get themselves into. We see Evie and Rick getting to know each other and complimenting each other surprisingly well during the shootout. It's like they've done this before almost. Even though she's a librarian, she stays remarkably calm in a dangerous situation. She has this natural intuition during a fight to burn one of the bad guys with a candle and pull Rick out of the way when he's about to get shot at the last second. There's also a lot of talk of the kiss, and a little romance is starting to brew here, so that's fun. Benny is such an amazing character. He's a slippery little guy, clearly just out for himself, much to discuss with him in particular. The Magi are also shown as the bad guys during this scene, but at the same time, there's something mysterious about them that we'll make sense of a bit later. Altogether, it's our first look at how our crew works together, even though they're all very different characters, and how their motivations are a bit more noble than the Americans, who are just purely out for whatever they can get their hands on. But anything I missed? What do you guys think about choosing this as our key scene for the movie?
It's really the only scene that truly matters in the movie because, let's be honest, the only thing that matters in the movie is the O'Connell horse's Benny River dialogue.
It's so good. Hey, Benny, looks to me like you're on the wrong side of the river. Just that classic Brendan Fraser delivery.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say about that is, and maybe you guys agree with me, but it felt like two kids screaming at each other during recess or something.
Oh, totally.
The sentences were comically long. It's something you wouldn't just shout. And so I don't know, there's an awkwardness to it that I kind of found funny.
Yeah, and not realistic at all, if we want to get into the weeds. Burning boat, people screaming, gunshots going off, fire, explosions. They wouldn't be able to hear each other. Come on.
To talk a little bit more about another great O'Connell and Benny scene in this is when O'Connell finds Benny hiding behind the boxes doing, I don't even know what he's doing back there, but he makes this little noise, and O'Connell threatens to kill him, and Benny says, "Think of my children." O'Connell says, "You don't have any children." Then he says, "Someday I might." It's so funny. That line gets me every time.
This time I must go all the way. It's what is his... it's a very ambiguous
It's like
ethnicity.
Arabian American. Who knows? He's American, so it probably was just not a real accent.
Yeah, there's a lot of generalizations happening in this movie.
Yeah.
No, it's so great. I guess Kevin J. O'Connor ad-libbed the line about not having any children, but he might someday. So it's just very funny. He's got such great comedic timing throughout this whole scene, the whole movie in particular.
I had known that actor previously as Daniel Plainview's brother from There Will Be Blood, and I was saying that had I seen this movie prior to seeing There Will Be Blood, it would have been really, really hard to not let that performance kind of influence my first viewing of that movie. So
yeah, he's apparently a muse of Paul Thomas Anderson's. He was also in The Master, which I rewatched or I watched recently and didn't pick up on that. But I thought that was so funny.
This is another kind of obscure quote from the scene. It's very early on, but something I wanted to point out is the Americans playing cards when they first get introduced. Burns, the guy with the glasses, says, "Without my glasses, I can't see the deck to cut it. Can I, Dane?"
Oh.
So I only just picked up on this during the recent rewatch, but it unfortunately shows or foreshadows what will happen to his character with the mummy a little later on.
Yeah, that little bit of exposition is it's funny because even if they had cut that line, he was wearing glasses, and when we later see the glasses getting stomped on down in the tomb, it's like we still would have understood that he like couldn't see without them.
Yeah.
But they still made sure to like put in this line as if that was the deal breaker.
Did you guys come across the fact that Henderson's actor, I can't recall the name, was slated to play Brendan Fraser's role?
I did, yeah.
And he just didn't have the chops.
So yeah, he's the guy wearing Stephen Dunham is the actor. He's the guy wearing
Yes.
the bandana that we see with like the flowing hair. So he originally auditioned for the role of Rick O'Connell, but Sommers liked him so much that he cast him as Henderson instead for this crew of Americans.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm. Our full cast of characters gets introduced in this scene. We're seeing them all interact together for the first time. There's a lot of pithy dialogue, a lot of quotable moments, some that we've gone through already. And we're getting some exposition through their banter or maybe how they react when they're put to the test in a dangerous situation. What stood out from a performance standpoint in this scene to you guys?
Performance-wise, Love Struck Evie in her little chamber is kind of a perplexing moment. You couldn't really tell at first if she's drunk or if she's just like, it doesn't really make sense.
In her room.
Yeah, she gets drunk later in the movie, and it's almost as if she was playing her drunk self very odd.
She's love drunk.
I think she's just so hung up, like getting distracted about the kiss. You know, she's really spending some time. It's getting to her. It's distracting her from her studies. Rachel Weisz does a great job as Evie. I think
she does.
Like you mentioned, Harry, obviously a lot of inspiration from the character of Marion in Indiana Jones, but she plays a really smart, capable heroine who's not a damsel in distress. She like shrewdly pulls some strings to get O'Connell to become their guide because she knows she wants to go find this book. She's also pretty naive at the same time. Even though she has the brains, she doesn't necessarily have that experience in the field that Rick has. So they do end up complementing each other really well as characters as the movie goes on.
The movie definitely tries to paint her as like a bookworm and undesirable. And I just like had a hard time believing that because Rachel Weisz is so naturally beautiful that I just can't see her become that infatuated with any guy that gave her that kind of attention. I agree with Harry. It seemed like very sudden, the shift in her character.
Yeah. Yeah, back to the Americans. I think they're a hoot in this scene. Just kind of each one has its, kind of one note. Like this is the glasses guy. This actually, I don't know. There's the glasses guy and then the two other guys. But specifically them when they're in the full on, shootout.
They're in their element.
Literally yelling "Yeehaw" and
just baboons. Yeah. Yeah.
One of my favorite parts of the movie, Jonathan.
Oh, he's very funny. Yeah.
Great comic relief. We're just assuming that he's like a pickpocket, right? Like he's kind of a schemester.
He steals stuff. Yeah. He's frequently drunk throughout the film. He's just sort of an aloof character who ends up pulling his weight in the end. That's his set of skills, I guess.
Yeah. His line, did I panic? I think not. That's a great one.
What about Brendan Fraser? What do you guys think of his performance?
So I read an interesting quote from him that I think maybe helps describe his headspace during the making of this movie. So he said, "We didn't know whether we were making a horror movie. We didn't know if this was an action picture. We didn't know if it was a romance picture. All of the above, none of the above. We didn't know. We did not know." Which is so fascinating. I think Fraser's portrayal of Rick set a standard for the types of heroes that we would come to see over the next decade or two. I'm thinking of kind of like smart but brash hero characters like Tony Stark and Iron Man. It definitely, again, feels like very inspired by Harrison Ford as Han Solo or Indiana Jones. But he's got more of like a goofball energy. Like he's kind of a smartass with some kid-like energy. And at the same time, he's almost like more charming than Harrison Ford's characters as well.
Maybe it's just me, but I feel like there were a couple instances in this movie and even in this scene itself where it just like felt like he was reciting lines. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. And I'm a big fan of his. I really loved his performance in The Whale. But for some reason, this movie, I just feel like something didn't really completely connect with me.
Are you talking about where he's like loading his guns during this scene and kind of talking about what he thinks is waiting for them.
Yeah, part of that. Yeah.
Sand and blood.
And blood.
Blood. Yeah.
I think that's part of the like schmaltzy old Hollywoodness of the film.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Omid Jalili's depiction of Warden God Hassan he's one of my favorites as well. He's like the lesser Benny. Very similar traits to Benny. He's out just to make a buck. Maybe not as like sniveling and traitorous. But he reminds me of you remember the character Watto from
Yes.
He is like the same character. That, by the way, what is that? Attack of the Clones? Is that what it's called?
Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace, also 1999.
Yes, a 99 film. But he's just a hoot. They refer to him on numerous occasions as their smelly little friend, which is just silly. And then the way he jumps off that boat is so funny.
I think he's one character that, I mean, there's no denying that it has like not aged well and is definitely deeply problematic in its depiction of like Arab culture.
Yes.
I mean, obviously he's there for comedic beats, but that was kind of cringeworthy to see some of his scenes in this movie.
So let's talk a little bit about the time period of the film. It's the mid-1920s. King Tut's tomb had just been discovered a few years before, and it sets off this craze of Egyptomania around the world. This scene feels super old Hollywood to me, and how we're seeing the Roaring '20s depicted. There's a card game. We're on an old steamer ship cruising down the Nile. There are steamer trunks, nightgowns, pistols, spectacles, oil lamps. It almost feels like we're on a ride at Universal Studios or something. What stood out to you guys from a production standpoint in this scene?
I mean, one thing for me, just on this kind of what I assume is an old steam tugboat, it does make me kind of long for being in that setting. Just playing a game of cards by lamplight, you know? And so I do like the production design of it all, and the fact that you know, everything lights on fire comically lights on fire, like the Magi being like thrown onto the couch on fire, then another Magi being like shoved through a doorway that's on fire.
Oh yeah.
Fire is a huge element to the scene, and those like orange hues coming off of it, whether it's from the lamps or the fire, mixed with kind of that blue background. It's, you know, nice color palette to the set design and scene.
Yeah, to touch on that a little bit more, Cody, and this isn't to diminish the hard work of the production team on this film, but the ship very much felt like a movie set to me. Or like almost kind of like a fake movie within like another movie, kind of like The Fall Guy. You know, we talked about that earlier this year, where just it felt like it was an obvious set to me.
So I did a little bit of digging, and it was filmed on a set. So this scene was shot at Shepperton Studios, which is just outside of London, and they've shot a lot of famous movies there, Alien, some Harry Potter films. None of this movie was actually shot in Egypt. I guess at the time it would have been too dangerous, too complicated legally. So the movie was shot on location in Morocco for any like outdoor scenes of the city. And this boat scene, you're probably feeling that it was a set because it was all built on a sound stage.
Oh, yeah. I think that it's not necessarily the set itself. I don't know if it's the lighting. Maybe you can speak to that, Cody. But for some reason, it almost shows too much, even though it's in the dark. I don't know how to, I can't put my finger on it.
You've got that like very blue night in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like this one story I think of a lot that a friend of mine from film school always recalls. The first time he realized that you have to like light for nighttime was when he watched the film Without a Paddle, weirdly, which Mark, I know, personal favorite of yours.
Great movie.
And they're like out on a raft in the middle of the night and you can see what's happening.
Yep.
So he realized that like you have to light for the moon, essentially. But I think it's the opposite effect here in the scene where it might be overlit.
Yeah.
So it's like, where is this light source coming from? And what your brain picks up on having been in similar lighting conditions, is probably like this is overlit and thus looks artificial in some way, like a huge key light coming from a lighting grid on the stage, or that might be what you're reacting to, Mark.
Yeah, I think that's exactly a good point.
It doesn't cheapen it for me, but it kind of enhances it, because I feel the same way. It feels
Me too.
like constructed and fake. But like you think back to the Indiana Jones thing, like some of the most iconic parts of that movie are like so set like and just like contrived, but they work. Like the ball rolling through the cave is like, and the way even some of the bricks punch out is like, these are big, just like foam bricks. I get that same kind of the same feeling here, and I just love it. Like the jangling
That's
keys,
true.
and it's so the kind of ragtimey feel.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Yeah, very, very physical, very tangible. And I would rather like any of this stuff here than the computer generated elements of the time.
Right,
I think,
right.
which I know were like really innovative, but I'd prefer to go like full practical. And this felt very like 90s action set piece with very little CG,
Just going back to something you said, Harry, I wanted to quickly talk about Brendan's outfit and costume for this movie, because it definitely is the quintessential action hero aesthetic, and it definitely calls back to Indiana Jones. It's basically like the same thing without the fedora and the whip. He has, this partially unbuttoned dress shirt and the rolled up sleeves, and then he has this leather shoulder harness which allows him to have like all these guns and weapons. He's kind of set up as like eye candy in some ways.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of other like great physical set pieces too. Like you mentioned that huge collection of guns that he unfurls in front of Evie. It's such a great moment. We get all these like good sound effects and like interesting little tools that he has. Like there's a hook in there. There's some kind of pickaxe. There's all the gas lamps that we see around the ship that play a role later with the fire. And then one I love is like how great of a design is that little key box.
Oh yeah, okay.
So satisfying.
That's probably my number one thing I like about the movie. I knew you would. Is the key for that like slots perfectly into both
gratifying.
of the books. It's very gratifying. Like great little sound design elements when the little wings pop out of it, the triangular wings. And I think it was within the past year, Prop Store was doing an auction of that key, and I don't know if it was like the hero like screen match key or a but it was up for auction, and I didn't see the result, but I was kind of like, yeah, I would just love to have that, even though I'm not like a huge fan of the movie.
That's incredible.
It's just a great object.
Yeah,
it was very Kronos like, if you've seen the movie Kronos, Guillermo del Toro, which is actually, I looked at it, I thought it was like almost identical, but that was just a bad memory. The Kronos thing is like a scarab beetle, so there was like a funny similarity. Unknowingly. Yeah.
Well, another thing that contributes to this classic look of the 1920s is the way this scene is shot. So how the camera moves and keeps up with the action. We have a lot of like close quarters combat, or how it might clue the audience in on things happening behind the scenes that our characters aren't fully aware of yet, like the Magi sneaking up beside the ship. What did you guys think of the cinematography here by Adrian Biddle?
I really respect the decision to saturate the color palette and really let the vivid scenery shine.
Yeah.
You look at the 1999 film Seven, really, really cool looking movie, but there is kind of this green spike fluorescent look to it. And while that works for that very, serious, dour film, this is an action adventure in Egypt, and you should really let the palette shine through. And they definitely were not afraid to like saturate the hell out of it. You get the like really blue moon, the oranges and yellows of the desert, and they were not afraid to dial up that look. So I respect that, because a lot of films you see now have a very flat, low contrast look. So this was kind of just like, it throws it way into the stylization bucket. It stood behind its convictions, and I definitely love that about the look of the film and the lighting and the color grade.
Hmm. One thing I noticed about the actual shot composition is that for a lot of the action scenes, they use a lot of close ups. And one thing that I think it does add is that we really do see Brendan and Rachel kind of performing a lot of these stunts together. Like you can't really hide that. And if they did a good job because it looked like they were actually performing a lot of the stunts that were occurring.
Yeah, and going along with that old school look, the adventure vibe of the film, we get a very sweeping score by Jerry Goldsmith. We also have a lot of great sound effects throughout this scene. We've got explosions, water splashing, yelling, fighting, horses, Benny making a really weird noise. There's a lot going on sound-wise in this scene. What stood out from a sound standpoint?
One that immediately comes to mind is when O'Connell squeezes Jonathan's shoulder to get him to shut up at the card table. The inserted sound there is like, ooh, like that sounded
It's like he's cracking his shoulder. It's such a tight squeeze.
It's very, very loud in the mix. It's like he just shattered his collarbone.
Is there it sounded close to but not quite spot on, like a Wilhelm scream use when Fraser pushes the Magi warrior into the inflamed boat cabin.
Oh yeah.
You get a shriek from him, which it's very Wilhelmy, but I don't think it's the exact one.
It's kind of like generic sounding. Yeah.
Yes.
So one thing you guys might be surprised to know is The Mummy was nominated for 1 Oscar, and it was actually nominated for Best Sound by Leslie Schatz, Chris Carpenter, Rick Klein, and Chris Monroe. But it ended up losing out to The Matrix, believe it or not.
Oh, yep. That's a hard year to compete, I would imagine, in any technical category. Yeah.
Another thing, too, is so outside of the great sound effects, we do get a little bit of the score here from Jerry Goldsmith. So we don't get a lot of it for the first part of the scene, but it really starts to kick in once we see the watery footprints that are leading into Evie's room. And that's where we start to get that Egyptian theme, that sort of classic Egyptian music. And it really kicks into high gear with a huge swashbuckling vibe during this fight scene. It's very like, brass and a lot of like cymbals and crashes that just kind of accentuate the action that we're seeing on screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of inspiration here, probably taken from John Williams. We've been talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark and kind of that adventure theming behind the music.
Yeah.
And even John Williams was inspired by a composer named Eric Wolfgang Korngold. He is kind of known for his swashbuckling adventure themes. He did scores such as The Adventures of Robin Hood, the Errol Flynn movie Captain Blood.
Okay.
Very much in the like adventure piratey sounding milieu of scores. And I would have to imagine that he was like heavy inspiration for The Mummy.
Stepping outside the film or this scene a little bit, Cody, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you have a canopic jar in your bedroom growing up? And if so, was it inspired by this film?
It definitely was not inspired by this film. But yes, I did. It was a canopic jar that my grandma bought for me on a trip to Egypt.
Oh, wow.
I don't know exactly like where she got it. I just imagine her like breaking into a tomb,
Ooh, don't open that up. Be careful.
Yeah, don't open it. No, I'm guessing it was from like a shop or something, but it was kind of like a large jar and it was a wooden material. And I remember it had, I think it was like it wasn't Horus, but it was some sort of like owl on the top. I'll have to refresh my Egyptology, but I think it just speaks to a certain period of time that we all have in childhood where kids become obsessed with Egypt for some strange reason. Yeah. I mean, I think everyone remembers fondness for that period of time. Weirdly, it's just such an interesting topic.
No, I can picture those old like Dorling Kindersley books that say like Egypt on it, those huge books. Like, I had a bunch of those. I really wanted a canopic jar too when I was a kid. It's just like something about them as objects that they're just cool, even though they're like filled with old organs. I don't know. There's something very interesting about them.
On top of just purely the ancient Egypt aesthetic, I think everyone also has like a nostalgia for like early 1900s, British archaeological expeditions of that area. So you get kind of two layers of,
it's a double whammy.
Of kind of this nostalgia or whatever it is, fascination.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, it's been really fun to relive this scene with the four of us here. To know the Mummy is to love the Mummy. There are so many little moments that you can only appreciate, I feel like, when you're watching it with a group of people. So to go through this again with Harry, you and Mark, it's like we're back in the basement watching this all together in one of those movie marathons, and you're calling out some goofy little detail, your favorite quote, the way somebody delivers a line. All those things combined together make this very fun ride of the Mummy. And half the fun is just recognizing those goofy details or those little moments from the film. So I'm glad we got to dig into it and looking forward to doing it again next time.
Definitely. And thank you, Harry, so much for joining us here today.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks so much, Harry, for joining us. Appreciate it.
That was fun.
Yeah.
So much fun.
And thank you to our listeners and fellow movie enthusiasts for reliving this scene with us. Do you have a favorite scene from The Mummy? You can email us at contact@scenecraftpodcast.com with any of your thoughts or comments, or follow us online at Scenecraft Podcast for any scheduling updates and news. You can support the podcast by leaving us a review or star rating on your platform of choice. A very special thanks to Jordan Summerlad for our theme music. This has been Scenecraft, where we break down the craft behind our favorite scenes. See you all next time.